Okay, so hi everyone. Hope you are doing well. I am hosting the host of this podcast today. I am life coach Nonie, and I am hosting Kaneshi from Coach Up Host. Did I pronounce it correctly, first of all?
No, it's a good question. And it gets people all the time because the I makes people think it's pronounced as an I should be. It's actually the I at the end of my name. It's pronounced Kanesha.
Kanisha. Okay,
Yeah.
so do apologize.
Oh,
I have Kanisha from Coach Up Host on her podcast today, and I have got free reign on all the questions I can ask her. She does not know the questions, but we do have a caveat of faith over fear. That is what we are talking about today. And as I said, I am life coach Nonie, so let's get through this. Okay, tell me more about Kanisha. But firstly, how are you?
Thank you, Noni. I am good. And thank you so much for being my guest host today. I'm very excited about having you do this with me and this journey. It's a new concept, it's a different concept. And so, having met you briefly as we talked the first time we met, I'm very excited and comfortable with having you take me through this experience of hosting me. So, thank you for the time and the conversation that we're about to have.
No, you're welcome. And likewise as well. It is my pleasure to question you, to put you in the hot seat. I have been watching all the other episodes on your podcast and on YouTube especially. And it's quite nice. I love the questions that you have for your guests. So I took a few snippets from there and I was like, you know what, let's reverse this back to the owner and see how she will handle being on the hot seat. Because why not, right? It's a beautiful Saturday morning for you, afternoon for me, but why not?
Yeah.
So firstly, we'll just do some icebreakers. I'm sure you have introduced yourself numerous times on your podcast, but I want people to really know, really know who Kanisha is, what does she do, and for who she does it for.
That's a good question. So I help struggling and frustrated coaches to build their business to their very first six-figure year. I do that, Noni, by interviewing 6 and 7-figure earning coaches on my podcast, Coach Up Podcast. That is what I do first. Secondly, I speak. So I'm a speaker and I speak on what we're talking about, which is forging through fear, because things show up in our lives that are really undergirded by fear and we don't recognize it. And so it's things like procrastination, doubt, being undisciplined, even being lazy sometimes. It can be obviously limiting beliefs, and there's a fear that's undergirding that. And we often don't like fear. We don't like to say we're afraid of stuff. We don't recognize it. But if that's the underlying aspect of whatever it is that's causing us not to actually move forward in our lives, then we have to be able to attack that, and we have to know how to move through it. And I say attack because fear is, I believe, fear is spirit. And it's something that attacks us. It is not something that that just comes once, and then once you eradicate it, it's over, right? It's going to constantly attack. I believe that some of us can overcome fear completely, and that's by my faith. For all, because it does attack, we constantly have to know what are the tools that we have to use in order to slay this demon and move through it so that we can continue toward the path and the progress that the Lord has for us. So I speak about forging through fear as well. But who am I? So that's what I do. But who I am is a child of God, and that is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I am a woman who is trying to figure it out, honestly. And I say that because I had a wonderful, blessed corporate job for years and corporate career. And then Jesus pulled me out of that 4 years ago and now has set me on this path of helping coaches specifically with building their business through the power of conversations and collaboration and connection, which is where the connection collaboration space comes from. And then also talking to people through about how do you get through fear. But I think, Nonie, it's because the Lord needed me to say, he needed to point out to me, you're dealing with some fear. And so you need to, in the process of helping others, you're going to be helping yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's who I am and what I do.
Amazing. I love, there's so many things that I could pick up from what you have said there. Firstly, your journey of fear, and how God is using you to go through your journey of fear whilst helping other people go through their journey of fear. And one thing that I would love to say and ask you as well is,
I did it, not you. You're good. Sorry.
It's okay. I mean, one thing I would like to say and ask you is, oftentimes, especially with the line of work where we are at as coaches, or rather the system has categorically said, and not categorically say, that you have to show up as somebody who has got it all. And in order for someone or your peers or your people that you're coaching to know that they can also get it all, because you cannot show up if you haven't got it all and say, I can help you get it all. So how did that at all give you the fear when you started?
Such a good question. I am a believer in what you just said of, in order for you to teach somebody, you had to have done it well, right? We're in 2024. We are 4 years removed from the quote unquote pandemic. Where online businesses seem to just completely blow up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what we saw was coaches emerging, businesses emerging, where people said, I can make money online because I'm going to tell you how to do something, but we don't necessarily know if they knew how to do it or not. Mm-hmm. And I have talked to coaches on my podcast who were burned from that. They paid 5 figures to individuals who said they could help them do X, Y, and Z. And then they got into the program and realized this person either didn't know what they were talking about, or their program was just horrible and weren't able to convey it. So I say all that to say, I'm a believer that if I'm going to teach something, I should have been through it. And then I can teach you not only from a knowledge, but an experience place. So it's interesting you ask this question, because in my business world of building this business as a podcast host and now as a speaker on Forging Through Fear, I thought, okay, Lord, I'm not yet at 6 figures on my podcast. So I'm not coaching anybody to build to 6 figures. I am facilitating the conversations from those who have. But at the same time, we're talking about fear, because that was your question, like, have I experienced that and overcome it, that I can then speak to other people about it? And I thought, well, in my limited thinking, I thought, in my business, no, I have not. There's still fears that I deal with, right? But when it came to my business, I thought, okay, so in my limiting belief, I was thinking the Lord was calling me to talk about forging through fear and building the business. And then I thought, well, you're right. Like, I'm still working through those fears. I'm still progressing through them. I'm still attacking them, because I haven't reached out yet to consistently. So I have reached out to companies to say, I would love for you to be a sponsor for my podcast, right? Because the podcast, part of the way to make money from the podcast is advertisers and sponsors. But I haven't done that consistently. And Nonie, I have to recognize that that's because I'm afraid of them rejecting me. Mm-hmm. Even though logically I know this, a no doesn't change anything in life. It doesn't hurt my feelings. They don't know me. I don't know them. But my issue is I want everything I touch to be successful immediately. And I think a lot of people deal with that. And so then if we have the thought process that it could not be, we prefer to just push that off, AKA not do it, so that we don't have to be disappointed when the first phone call doesn't net a $10,000 sponsorship. Instead, we don't want to have to do the work to get to the 1,000th phone call that may net the $10,000 partnership. But if we never start, we'll never get there, right? So, but I knew, when I think about it, and I appreciate you asking this question, I know that me forging through fear has been my whole life. And I would imagine for all of you all listening, that has been the case for all of you in some shape, form, or fashion. So what do I mean by that? Me, for example, as whenever applying for a new job, like there's fear in that. When I was in corporate America, is anybody going to want me? Am I going to be able to get through the interview process well? Are they going to like me? But you do it anyway. Moving. So I've moved almost every 5 years of my life to a new city. Am I going to find people? Am I going to know people? Am I going to find a church? Am I going to be successful there? And there's that fear of the unknown, but yet I did it anyway. And so there have been, I'll even give you another one. Being in a relationship. So as I've grown, I'm not yet married, yet being the operative word. The Lord is going to send
Amen to that. Amen to that.
Thank you. I'm not married, and as people, I don't even just say women, get older, we think, am I going to find that spouse? And so there's that fear, but you still have to continue to put yourself out there, have that conversation with people, be willing to meet people. And even in doing that, like in my earlier years, so 8 years ago or something like that, I got into and stayed in a really horrible, unhealthy relationship out of quote unquote fear, because I thought, oh, this one is semi-good. I feel like this is I could make this work. I could marry them, even though that's not perfect. But that was underlying fear of, I don't think I deserve better, or I don't think I can find better, or I'm getting older and the time is running out. And so I'm sure all of you all have fears that you can relate to, but we have overcome them. And that's where we have to recognize, I have overcome fear before, and I've forged through fear before. And so I do know how to do it. And I have the personality type, Nonie, I will tell you, I have the personality type where I used to be. I've seen this shift a little bit over the years, and I needed to get back. I used to realize that I was afraid of something, and then I get mad, and then I go do it. Because I was mad that I was afraid, because I know the fear, I should not be afraid. There's really nothing to be afraid of. Fear is really imagining something that has not happened yet. So why am I afraid of something that's imaginary? You should not. So I do have the experience, but I'm still growing, and I'm still going through it. And I think that's what will make me, or does make me, a great and a powerful speaker on it, because it's not just, I can tell you how to do it because I've done it, but I'm going through it with you. And so I can relate to you as we talk about it as well.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I thank you for your honesty as well, because there's fear in being honest, because as well, right? There's fear in being honest. So thank you for your honesty, for your vulnerability, and, for everything that you have spoken about fear. You touch on a lot of characteristics that fear shows up in one's life. And sometimes, as you mentioned, right, fear of speaking out, fear of, applying for the job. But when you apply for a job, like you said, you are applying in the hope of faith. You are literally forging through the fear in the hope that they'll see your CV without seeing you and they'll like you. You touched on, fear in the sense of compromising yourself for the hope, right? Because we have to put hope as well in there, because when you're fearful of something, or you want to stay in that fear, you are hoping that that fear would go away at some point. And you touched on the different ways where you have acted up on that fear and what you have done to surpass through that fear, literally forging through fear, right? Which literally then brings me to my next point. And my next question is, when I looked at your bio, that is literally what it said. And I will read it here in case nobody has looked you up, because why not? They really need to look you up. And it said, I courageously help people face their fears, forge through fear through to creating bright futures. And there's something that you mentioned before, where you said you move every 5 years. That is not an easy thing to do. Like, literally, that is not an easy thing to do. I have moved twice. I've not more than twice, but the ones that are sticking and very monumentous, I would say twice. And in that move, firstly, was at 16. I was young. I was a teenager. I was just moving, I mean, across the world, basically. But you know what? I was young and I did it, excited, and dealt with everything that life went through, that life brought in. And then again at 26, 25, 26, to a different town and starting afresh, literally leaving everything behind and starting afresh. And I remember that time, I was so hopeful, excited, fearful, nervous, excited, fearful, excited. Those were literally the emotions that went through me at that time. And I know that your audience, they are 7-figure coaches. They go through the same thing. And the fact that they come and still forge through that fear. There's a book, I don't know who wrote the book, Feel the Fear and keep it moving, I think. I don't know, don't quote me. But there's a lot of statements out there in the world, especially in our industry, where we're talking about fear and how to move forward, how to find your inner self. I have the Superwoman pose, the Wonder Woman pose that I found it when I was watching Grey's Anatomy, and every time now I know I do something, I'm like, Wonder Woman pose, let's do it, and so. My question for you, which, is what are the 3 things that you need as a person, as a coach who is going for the 6 to 7 figures, right? Or as a coach who is just about to start, whom God has said, I want you to do this. I am sending you out to do this. And I love that you touched on God and you touched on faith. And I'll touch on that after you answer my question, because I can go off on a tangent. But what are the 3 things that you feel everyone who has fear should do to forge through?
Number 1, and Nonie, I have to tell you, I don't even like this answer. It's a fact, but I don't even like the number 1, because I just sometimes don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
But the number 1 thing is, you have to know, you can call it purpose, you can call it why, whatever you want to call it. Most people land on why. That's our word in this generation. Know your why. Mm-hmm. And you have to know that in order to continue when the fear comes. And I'm not talking about the why am I existent? Okay, all of you all are existent because Jesus loves you and wants a relationship with you. Just so everybody's on the same page. In addition to that, he also gives us a purpose for our lives. Some are, Nonie, you're a life coach. You're also a mother. You're also a wife, right? There are some of you all, it is to help individuals through difficult circumstances. Some of you, it is to build amazing architectural designs for buildings big and small that house people to be able to go to work in. Some of you all, it is to create social media platforms that allow people to have connection. Like, we all have a different purpose. I'm not even talking about that why. I'm talking about when you're in your business, you don't want to make a sales call, and the fear is attacking you of, I don't want to be rejected. I'm afraid either of failure or success, equally both, that you say, why am I doing this? And you drill down to, okay, I'm doing this because I want to work for myself. Okay, why do I want to work for myself? I want to work for myself because I want to have more freedom in my time. Why do I want to have more freedom in my time? I want to have more freedom in my time because I want to be able to spend time with my children. Why do I want to spend time with my children? I want to spend time with my children because I love them and I want to be able to provide them a place where I can shape and mold them so that they're going to be the amazing adults that God intended for them to be. I don't know if you've heard of the 5 whys, but oftentimes when you ask yourself why you're doing something, the first why is not the real one. So you keep asking why as you answer each one. But when you know the why, of why I need to do this activity, it will remind you and push you to forge through that fear. So then I go back and I say, okay, I don't want to make these sales calls. I'm afraid that I'm going to get rejected, or I'm afraid it's going to take forever for me to get results. But I know that on the other side of me making these sales calls is what gets me to be able to have the time freedom, not have a 9 to 5, if that's your goal, but using that as an example, be it so that I can be at home with my child, so that either when my child comes home from school, I'm there, or I can pick them up, or I can homeschool them, or whatever, because they are the most important thing, one of the most important things in my life. And I need to do this in order to be able to be with them. And knowing that, and that's right, that's different from the why you're doing your business, or why you're created. So figure out the why behind that's anchoring your activity, and that will push you through, help you forge through that fear. That's number one. Number two is, in the clear moments of not feeling pressured to do something or to act, which is when the fear stops us. In the clear moments when you're just thinking about stuff, make a plan. And don't make a 17-point plan, because none of y'all are going to follow it, and neither would I. Make a 2-part plan or 1-part plan that includes, this is what I'm committing to do. And I'm just going to stick with the theme of reaching out for sales, because as coaches, you do not have a business if you do not have clients, if you do not have sales. That's how that works. So make the plan on a Saturday afternoon or a Monday morning when you're in your planning phase that says, okay, this week at 3:00 every single day from 3 to 4, I am, no matter what, going to make 20 sales calls. And if I get done before 4:00, I keep going. If I don't get done before 4:00, then I have a 30-minute cushion where I will continue to until I either get to 20 or I get to 4:30. But I am committed to that. And I know that if I do 20 sales calls and I talk to 10, my goal is to get at least 2 people to say yes to convert, what have you. But that plan then takes the emotion out of it, because fear is an emotion, right? It's not a character trait. It is not a tangible thing. It's an emotion. And when we objectively plan things, we take the subjectivity out of it. And that helps to remove the fear. Because when you have a plan and then you just abide by the plan, the emotion is lessened, because now I know, oh, okay, I just need to do this. I've already laid it out. But that's best done in your moments of objectivity, when you're not in the midst of, it's Friday at 12:00. I was supposed to make 100 sales calls, and I'm going to be done working at 5. And I'm just so overwhelmed. I don't want to do any of it. I'm just going to go sit on the couch and we'll start on Monday. How many times have people done that? So don't do that, right? Have a plan. And then the third thing is, have accountability. And usually, Nonie, you can't be accountable to yourself. There are a few amazing people who can hold themselves accountable. Most of us are not in that few category. And even if you are, it is a proven fact that your productivity and your results increases by, I think it's over 60%. It may be somewhere more around the 80%, that when you tell somebody else your goals and you give them permission to check back in with you to see if you actually met your goals, your success rate increases. Like I said, it's somewhere between 60 and 80%, versus if you don't do that, if you don't tell anybody, and then versus if you don't give them permission to come back to you and say, did you do X, Y, and Z? So that accountability helps you forge through that fear, because it actually instills a little bit of different fear, because you really don't want that person to come back to you, or you have to go to them and say, I didn't do it, over and over. So that fear sort of drives you of, let me do what I said I was going to do, so they don't think that about me. So those would be the 3 things that I, just distilling it down really quickly, would say that is how you forge through fear. Make sure you know your why. Make sure you have a plan of how you're going to achieve what it is that you need to do, and then have somebody hold you accountable.
A woman after my own heart, literally. Because if only you knew, that is the foundation of everything. Number one, the foundation of my community, is that literally. But the fact that you have mentioned it in the way that you have to know your why, and there are 5 whys, right? I didn't know there were 5 whys. I just always kept telling my leaders in my community that you really need to dig deep, like dig right in deep to know your why. But now I know it's 5 whys. So I am learning something. If you are listening to this podcast, make sure you wrote that down, because you need to really question your why. Give yourself a why, then question the why to get the answer to the why, and then question that why again. That is literally what Kaneshi was trying to say to you. But then the thing that you really touched on for me was having a plan, right? And we will go on the accountability partner part of it, because that is also another conversation to have, because there's this whole movement going on at the moment. Actually, let's go into that. There's a whole movement going on at the moment about, I don't know if you've seen it on Instagram, hide away for 6 months and then emerge as a whole new person, which is very doable, right? It really is doable. There's some people out there who work very well in silos, and they are their own accountability partners. I mean, the 12-week year books talks about you being your own accountability partner, because ultimately the goal is yours, right? And if you want the goal, you have to be accountable to yourself. But you also need a village to help you rise up. Alone, you can go far, right? You can go a little bit further, but together you go far. Yeah. And accountability is something that is important, but we undervalue it so much, in the sense that you will pay the 5 figures for a coach who said, I will get you this, right? Promised you the moon and the mountain and the sun at the same time. But they have done their part. They have told you what they can give you. They have given you the tools. The part and onus is on you to now be accountable to the goal, to the vision that you mentioned, to the why, the 5 whys that you mentioned, and also to be accountable to the 5 figures that you've just paid to get to that goal, right? And you touching on that, I'm hoping that whoever will listen to this podcast will really question their accountability in terms of who their village is, because you need a village that will empower you. You need a village that will cry with you, a village that will give you the tools, a village that will pray with you, and a village that will celebrate you.
Yeah.
Questioning your village that you have, right? Actually, even using the 5 whys on the village that you have. Why are you really here for me? Like, what is it in for you?
Mm-hmm.
I know what I'm getting, but what are you getting from me? For me, that is forging through fear. And that's the take that I took from there.
Yeah, I love your recap of that. And I love especially that you just said for your village also, right? Like, what are their whys, and to question that. And I think that's so important, because you need a village for accountability. I will also say that this village that you and I have just created together, right? Because your village starts with 1 or 2 and then it grows. I'm very excited about continuing. Unfortunately, our time has ended, but I know, right? It goes so quickly, so quickly. But I would be delighted for us to continue this conversation. And so, Nonie, before we go, will you really quickly tell people how they can connect with you and reach out to you, so that they can continue to hear you talk, because you also have your own podcast. Tell them what you do, who you are, and then we may have to continue this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm Love Coach Nonie. I am the founder of the Highly Favored Woman community, which is a community for women who are ready to elevate their lives and achieve their vision board goals through the power of faith, vision boards, and strategy as well. I have a podcast called the Highly Favored Woman Coffee Chat Podcast, and you can find me on Instagram at Life Coach Nonie as well.
Love it. Thank you for hosting me today. You asked me just the way you asked them questions and articulated back to me, like reflected back to me, things that I was saying helped me. And so this has been a great conversation.